Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's great to have you here as always. And today we are up to part 3 of our Practice Success series, which is aimed specifically at helping you set up 2021 to be your best year ever. Now, you remember in part 1, we spoke about developing a plan. We spoke about understanding that the planning process begins with acknowledging where you are right now. What's been working, what hasn't been working over the last 12 months. And we spoke about, the fact that all progress begins by telling the truth. And oftentimes the person that needs to hear that truth more than anyone is ourselves. And we spoke about, writing that in Technicolor language in detail rather than bullet points. We spoke about full sentences and paragraphs so we can get some depth and feeling and emotion to that. We spoke about, looking at the metrics of the business. What are the important metrics? Where are you now with those metrics? Where do you want to be with those metrics? And then breaking down your plan into quarters and understanding what are the priority projects, or the big rocks if you want to call it that, each quarter, and then what are the actions underneath that. Then, of course, in part 2 of our Practice Success series, we spoke about the be, do, and have model. And specifically, we spoke about the fact that the leadership of ourselves and of others was going to be critical. And we spoke about the periodic table of leadership, where we discussed the different elements of leadership. And they came under 4 categories: personal leadership, leading the way, the ability to empower people, and of course, managing the journey. And that was about taking the leadership pledge, PLEJ. I know it's a funny acronym with spelling, but it kind of makes sense. So we spoke all about that be, do, have model in terms of, who do I need to be so that I can do the things I need to do in order to have the things I want to have in my life, whether that's, business things, personal things, so on and so forth. So in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about something that perhaps not many people talk about, but I think it's really important that we talk about that. And that is, how do we manage setbacks or failures? Because here's the thing. Every single dentist I've ever met is pretty smart. There are some people obviously on a spectrum there who are super, super smart, but generally speaking, dentists are bright because you've got to get into university to do it. And what I've also noticed is that most dentists I've ever met are perfectionists. They're probably fairly tough on themselves, and setbacks and failures are not part of their lived experience to any great degree. So when they do occur, and it's normal that they do occur, of course, everyone has setbacks and failures. But what I've found is that people who are not used to that, or tend to be a bit more type A, a bit more perfectionistic in their nature, have a tougher time dealing with setbacks. So I want to start by talking about setbacks and failures today. So I guess the first thing I want to address in setbacks and failures is that they're normal. You're not going to go through life without experiencing a setback or a failure. We often look at people in social media or mainstream media and we assume that their life has been a very linear process, from where they were to their point of success today, that it's been a gradual climb, through that without any setbacks, and it's a straight line. If you were to graph it, would be, a straight line which is low on the lower left, moving to a high point on the upper right-hand side of the graph. And of course, intellectually, we know that life's not like that. We understand that there's lots of twists and turns, deviations, pit stops, roadblocks, etc., etc. So I guess the point I'm trying to make in all of this is, even though we understand it at an intellectual level, we sometimes find it hard to deal with at an emotional level. So I guess what I want to say to you is, be prepared for setbacks, because they are a fact of life. And of course, part of your planning process is around risk mitigation as well. What are the things that could go wrong, and how do I mitigate that? How do I reduce the likelihood of that event occurring? How do I reduce the impact of it should it occur? And how can I get some more control over that situation? So again, do the best to mitigate the situation as best you can. And of course, if things do go awry or things don't go as planned, I think, it's okay to feel some disappointment. It's okay to kind of go, you know what, I'm feeling a bit upset or cranky or frustrated or whatever it happens to be about this. But we've got to give ourselves some time to feel that disappointment, that frustration, whatever it is, and then move on. So, okay, I'm going to give myself 24 hours to go, I'm annoyed, angry, upset, and then tomorrow I'm going to get on with it, okay? And give yourself a time frame to experience that disappointment. And I think this is really interesting to understand, because when it comes to this, I heard a model today, actually, from a good friend of mine who's a dentist, Andrew Hong. Hello, Andrew, if you're listening. And he introduced me to the 3 A's model, which was around accepting, adapting, and achieving what you can. So if things go a little bit of awry or the circumstances change, we've got to accept things as they are, because there are some things that we can change and there's a whole lot of things that we cannot change. And so we need to be able to accept things as they are. We then need to adapt to those new circumstances, and then from there achieve what we can. And I think that's a great model. So when I heard Andrew explain it to me, I thought, that is a great model. And I tell you, 2020 was really a time when accepting the situation, adapting, and achieving what we could through that period of closure and COVID and all that came from it was, I think, a model that was very, very relevant. And I think it will continue to be relevant for the years after 2020 as well. So that's really important. Of course, when it comes to setbacks, we've got to be able to manage our blind spots. When we're looking at that risk mitigation, asking myself, what don't I see? What are the things that could disrupt my future stream of cash flow? What are the things that could derail my plans? And it's useful to get an external perspective on that. And that's why, the best athletes, the best performers in the arts, the best performers in any endeavor have a coach. When Tiger Woods was at the top of his game, he had 5 coaches. And someone said to him, Tiger, you're the best player in the world. Why do you need a coach? Really, come on, you're the best player ever. And his answer was quite telling. And his answer was, because I cannot see myself swing. Because we all have blind spots. And I think getting that external perspective, whether it's from a coach, whether it's from a friend, a colleague, whatever it is, have someone point out those blind spots to you. Okay, very, very important. And of course, when you're going through this situation, it's all fine to say risk mitigate or, identify blind spots and that sort of stuff. Again, that's very important. But of course, if something does go awry, then typically what happens is there's an emotional response. And as I said earlier, allow yourself to feel that emotion and then move on. But I think it's also important to not get caught up in the emotion and the stories that come out of that. And when my kids were young, we had them do some resilience training. And one of the things that the resilience trainer spoke about was this concept of detective thinking. And really asking ourselves, is that story true? Where's the evidence to support that story? Is it just a story that we tell ourselves, or is it backed up by hard, cold facts? And so I guess the thing I want to share with you around that is try not to get caught up in the emotional stories that we tell ourselves, because those stories can lead to, values and beliefs that may or may not serve us into the future. Then, of course, if there is a setback, if there is a failure, again, let's take the lessons from it, okay? What did we take from this? There's got to be a silver lining out of this. How can we take the lesson out of this so that we can either make sure we do things differently next time and we don't go back to, what was, or how can we risk mitigate better in the future, whatever that happens to be. So I think there's often a lesson in failure. Now, sometimes there's just not. If you've just had some really bad luck, being struck by lightning, maybe there's just nothing to be learned from that. But oftentimes, more often than not, there is a lesson to be learned from that. And so what I've said to people is with 2020, that 2020 was a year that, as I've said before, threw the kitchen sink at us. It threw everything. We had bushfires, we had pandemics, we had all sorts of movements around protests and so on and so forth. And I think it would be a shame. In fact, it would almost be a crime to go through a year like that and not take the lessons out of that, not take the learnings and apply them to our life moving beyond that. What are the things that you want to take from 2020 into 2021? Maybe it's an increased focus on your health and well-being. Maybe it's reinvigorated relationships with your family because you're at home so much. Whatever it happens to be is going to be really important. I know lots of people who have totally re-engineered their business because they had to. They'd been wanting to do it anyway, and then COVID made them do it. And so they've been really grateful, in a sense, to have gone through what they went through, because otherwise they may not have had the courage to make the changes that they ultimately made. So again, let's look at the lessons that come out of that and take the relevant lessons into the future with us. So when it comes to setbacks, as I said at the beginning, and when it comes to setbacks and indeed failures, they're a fact of life. Life is not a linear journey. Life is not one pathway. Life is, full of side journeys, pit stops, setbacks, ups and downs. It's a roller coaster ride, but ultimately you want to be, going back to that graphing analogy, you want to have the line of best fit trending in the right direction, even if the line itself jigs and jags around the place. So again, there's lots of things that we can take from that. So if you're getting some value out of this Practice Success series, I'm going to encourage you to come across to the Savvy Dentist Facebook group. If you're a practice owner, head across there. It is for practice owners only, but in there we have some tools, some training, and some resources. We've got a pro tip series there of heaps of tools and techniques that are going to allow you to make 2021 a great year for yourself, okay, and allow you to get some progress and some traction, some momentum in that. But if you're the sort of person who goes, well, that's all well and good, Jesse, but I want to get cracking on this now, then I'd invite you to book in for a strategy call with us. And there's two ways that you can do that. You can head across to savvydentist.com/call and book online there. We'll happily make a time to talk to you. Or if you're the sort of person that prefers to pick up the phone, feel free, call the office on 1300 66 83 84 and we can book a time. And on that strategy call, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting clear about where you are right now. What's your current state of play? Then equally, what's your ideal outcome? What is it that you want to achieve, not just in 2021, but beyond that? And let's map the stages of growth, the journey, the plan that's going to help you to go from point A to point B. And then from there, you've got a roadmap, you know what you're doing, and you're good to go. So if you'd like to participate in that, as I said, you can go to the website and book in, or you can call us on 1300 66 83 84, and we'd love to help you with that. So I hope you found this 3-part Practice Success series helpful. There's a lot of work in there if you want to take action on these things. So again, I'm going to encourage you to take notes and really implement this. And I look forward to talking to you around the trap. So that's it from me today. Take good care, and I'll see you next week with another episode of the Savvy Dentist Podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist Podcast with Dr. Jesse Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessegreen.com/savvydentist.